I think the kind of role that he took campaigning from behind the scenes in Penang during the state committee elections, I think it was very ugly. Welcome to the Are We OK podcast, the podcast that talks about politics and public policies in ways that are relevant to you, our loyal listeners, and also those who haven't subscribed yet. Please smash the subscribe button so that we can reach hopefully 35,000 later on this month. My name is Dr. Bota and...
My name is Peter, Mr. Money.
Okay, so Peter, what's been happening? We didn't record earlier last week. So, were you busy traveling?
I was busy traveling. I was busy doing quite a bit of work, mostly traveling as in and out of the office quite a lot. But just a lot of work within the office. But at the same time, something exciting that I was paying a lot of attention to was definitely the topic of today.
Okay. And today, we're going to be specifically focusing on the DAP CEC elections that took place last weekend. And I think because many people want to have an insider's view, so to speak, so we thought it would be good if we spend this entire episode dissecting and analyzing the results from different facets and different points of view. So let me just start off with a bit of a summary. And maybe the first thing that I want to talk about in the first section, and want to hear your response on this as well, Peter, is the theme of generational transition within the DAP. Right? So that was something that was not just highlighted by journalists, by people who are political observers in the country, but it was also something that was highlighted and specifically pointed out by Anthony Loke himself. Just a couple of days before the CEC elections, he said that if he's given a mandate, he would bring about substantive changes, including putting in leaders, with more responsibilities, especially from the younger generation. So did you see the overall results as delivering that kind of mandate of a generational change in the DAP?
Yes. In fact, even though I'm not a party member, but as an outside person who's watching in, I would say that this time round, it's quite amazing because even when you look at the list and you see what's happening, it does feel like for the very few times we see a Malaysia strong political party have a quite an impressive generational transition of power in that sense.
One that was quite ordered. Of course, I think one of the fault lines leading up to this CEC elections that was discussed widely in the media was the issue of factions in the DAP. And let me just say this right from the start, that in any political party, there's bound to be factions.
That's right.
Right. It's just that in the DAP, I think a lot of these factions basically consolidated and aligned with each other during CEC elections. Meaning the structure of the DAP elections, for those of you who don't know, is such that you have about 3,000 plus delegates comes in. They select 30 candidates, 30, right, to be put on a list to be elected into the CEC. It's not like UMNO or PKR where, if there's a contest between, different candidates, it will be at the presidential level, it will be at the deputy president level, it will be at the vice president level. In that kind of situation, it becomes a bit more dog eat dog, so to speak, or rather much more confrontational and adversarial. Whereas in the system that DAP practices, right, you need to trade off votes with each other, right? Which means different factions have to come together and say, okay, I control how many branches, I'm gonna support you, you also should support me. That's why in the past, a lot of these factionalism issues didn't really come up to the surface. Right. But in this case, I think because it was perceived as almost a kind of life and death battle for Lim Guan Eng, and we'll talk more about it later on. That was also part and parcel of that generational change, changing from the old guard, led by Lim Guan Eng to the new guard, maybe led by Anthony Loke. Right. So on that, for the benefit of our listeners, right, let me just tell you who are the ones from the so-called older generation who did not get into the CEC this time round, or they were part of the CEC in 2022, but now they are no longer in the CEC.
Off from the CEC.
Yes, correct. And these are the following individuals: Tan Kok Wai, the MP for Cheras, Fong Kui Lun, MP for Bukit Bintang, M. Kula, the former HR Minister and now Deputy Minister for Law, MP for Ipoh Barat, and then Jenny Lasimbang from Sabah, who was an Adun before this. So all four of them chose not to contest. And I think for Kok Wai, Kui Lun and Kula, they were very public in terms of announcing that they were not going to contest. So because of that, you can see already they are transitioning themselves out. Probably an indication that they probably won't contest in the next general election as well as part of that transition. The others, another person who didn't get in this time round is Ronnie Liu. He got in 2022, but because he left the party in 2023, obviously, he didn't contest this time round. And then, we go to some who contested but didn't get in, right? So among this list, the most well-known would be Teresa Kok, right? The MP for Seputeh, followed by Lim Hui Ying, MP for Tanjung, and also Deputy Minister of Finance, and also the sister of Lim Guan Eng. Lim Lip Eng, the MP for Kepong. I'm often mistaken for him. People call me, hey, you're Mr. Lim, is it? I say, no. I'm not.
Now they say you got it back. A little bit look alike. Yeah, a little bit look alike.
I usually say I'm the less handsome one lah. Yeah. For in respect with respect to Lip Eng, and then Thomas Su, the former MP from Ipoh Timor, now he's an Adun in Pahang. And then Vincent Wu, who is not very well known outside the party, but he's somebody with a long history of service within the party. And all these, I think, can be classified as part and parcel of the old guard. Right? Yep. So some familiar names to you guys, but maybe not all familiar. And then those who are in for the first time, they were not in 2022. Now they are in. They managed to make it to the top 30. Some familiar names and maybe others not so familiar. I'll start with Yeo Bee Yin.
Yep. Right.
Yeo Bee Yin, MP for Puchong, former MP for Bakri, former Adun for in PJ, former minister. And she got in this time. The last time she didn't get in because she was one of those people similar in my position, but maybe not so public, who asked Guan Eng not to become chairman, and she was punished for it. So I think this time, I think she played her cards right. Another person who got in is the Kota Melaka MP, Khoo Pei Tiong, who's also been named as the National Organising Secretary. We'll come back to that in the second part. Vivian Wong, the MP for Sandakan, young lady who recently got married around Valentine's Day. And then Liao Chai Tong, she's the Adun for one of the state seats in Johor, called in JB, near in JB town. And then Ram Kapal Singh, the MP for a seat in Penang. And Howard Lee, the MP for Ipoh Timor. Arul Kumar, who is an Adun and also Exco in Negeri Sembilan and former political secretary to Anthony Loke. And then Sharizan Johan, my successor in Bangi. And Nge Kuham, who is more of the older generation. He's the MP for Beruas. But yeah, you can see out of this list, all of them I think would be of the younger generation.
That's right.
Except for Nge Kuham. Ram Kapal Singh is the MP for Bukit Gelugo. And also, son of Kapal Singh as well.
That's
right. So you can see definitely a clear transition in terms of generational leadership.
Yeah.
Right. So I think that's overall, I think it's a good sign for the party in the sense that, the delegates have delivered, I think, a strong mandate to Anthony Loke in terms of generational change. Yes, there were some people who got higher, some people who got lower. But at the end of the day, in the DAP, it doesn't really matter that much. As long as you're in the top 30, you're an elected member of the CEC. And it really depends on the kind of role that you want to play in the positions that you've been given within the top 30. So any sort of like questions that you want to ask me, on these, some of these names?
Definitely, for me, there are certain questions about people who got in and also certain people who are not out. Right? We didn't hear... a lot of people will be guessing, just a public member like myself, will be any people we didn't hear who got out are part of a faction or somewhere or another involved in certain things, right? Like people feel that, hey, maybe this is siding this person, so maybe we're trying to send a signal by saying that, okay, these are the people that we want out, we want to usher in a new world. Any form of things like that.
Okay, so I think for those that may be seen to be more associated with the old guard, maybe more closely associated to Guan Eng, because Guan Eng actually made the campaign very much one about how he has served the party for a long time. He has fought for the party and for the country, which is all definitely true.
Yeah.
I mean, he is one of the reasons why I decided to join the DAP in the first place, because of how he struggled for the marginalized communities in Malaysia and for the cause of justice, throughout his political career. So I think, that is definitely one theme, and people who are seen in his camp would include people like Teresa, like I just mentioned, but also his sister, Lim Hui Ying, right? Who I think most people would agree, to a certain extent, she rode on the coattails of Guan Eng and maybe the father also, Kit Siang, to get to the position of not just being an MP, but a first-time MP who, became a deputy minister. Firstly, deputy minister of education, and then now deputy minister of finance. For somebody like Thomas Su, I think, he was, always seen in the Kula camp in Perak. So I think now that he's gone to Pahang, maybe not that big of a chance to engage with the other MPs in the Dewan, and maybe the contributions are not so apparent. So that's why I think he and maybe Vincent Wu also voted out. Lim Eng, I'm not quite sure. I think he's seen as somebody that I think wants to be useful to the party because he speaks out on different national issues. And I think that is something quite valuable, especially to our supporters who want to see and hear a check and balance kind of voice in the day one. But I'm not. I'm speculating that perhaps he didn't have enough, marbles to horse trade lah. And that's why he didn't make it. It was close. He probably lost out by about 200 votes lah. But so those were the people who didn't get in.
So within that part of the question that I want to ask on that is that when I observe this list, I noticed quite many of them are people who are very vocal MPs. The MPs who are generally will be like speaking up, and a big part of their campaign things that they say I hear a lot is the Lim camp is the camp that will speak up, voice out their opinion. If you do not have the Lim camp, then who else is going to voice out opinion? And it's quite true that quite many people are the people who speak out quite a lot lah. Whether what they speak is correct or wrong, another story.
Yep.
Yeah. And so what are your views on that? Do you think that with this current new list, quite many people here are not people who will just speak out? Now, my personal observation, I do notice the people within this new list here, most of them are not a very vocal people. They do speak out, but like, if they speak out, they are very much evidence-backed lah. They tend to be very well-mannered. When they speak out, it doesn't create that very brawly kind of thing, that kind of sensational kind.
Yep.
But that's my general thought. What are your thoughts? And is it a miss out in the party if we do not have such thing?
Yeah, so, there are different ways to answer that question. And I guess one of the, examples that I can point to answer your question would be the MP for Jelutong, Raya. Right? I'm not sure whether you have seen his clips in Parliament, but usually when clips of Raya are shown of him in Parliament, it's him shouting at the opposition, or when he was opposition, he would be shouting at the government. Every time Najib came into the room, whether he was in opposition or whether he was in government, Raya would take the opportunity to try to attack him, Every issue is linked towards Najib, or now maybe linked towards PAS or PN. So I think, and Raya is somebody who is seen to be very closely aligned with Guan Eng, right? So even though you can say that he's of the younger generation, but because of his close alignment to Guan Eng, I think that definitely cost him votes lah. And, that's one of the reasons why he didn't get in. This doesn't mean that the party doesn't value what Raya is doing, or some party members don't value what he's doing. I think there may be some value in terms of him being that kind of voice in Parliament. And if let's say that voice continues to be valued within Parliament itself, then the party would continue to give him a seat, right? Even if let's say he is not sort of like seen in the mainstream camp, right? But if let's say the party decides, hey, actually we prefer the approach where it's more evidence based, right? We don't think that we can win over the middle ground. If let's say we have this very confrontational approach, and there are other ways in which we can hold on to our base support even without this kind of approach, then I think you'll be able to see the party making this shift towards what you talk about just now, the more evidence-based kinds of clarification points, which may be an indication of a larger shift that is necessary for the party to take as part and parcel of government.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, if let's say you are seen to be attacking the government while you are in government, in a very vociferous way, that would be quite problematic for the party as well, right? So that kind of balance, I think, needs to be, addressed very carefully. And of course, when we talk about the part where we focus on Lim Guan Eng, that will be one of the key issues that Guan Eng and also the party will face in terms of his role in Parliament and also as advisor to the party. Yeah. So with that, we're going to take a short break and then come back with part 2, where we're going to talk about the different roles and responsibilities that were assigned to the top 30 of the CEC, or the Central Executive Committee of the Democratic Action Party. Be right back. Welcome back to the Are We OK podcast. This episode, we're focusing on the DAP Central Executive Committee elections that took place last weekend. First part, we talked about the generational changes in terms of the top 30 candidates who made it to the CEC. Now we're going to talk about the positions, okay? The advisor is Lim Guan Eng. He took over Tan Kok Wai, who didn't contest in the CEC elections. And we'll come back to Guan Eng in the fourth part. The chairman, the national chairman, is Gobind Singh. So Gobind replaces Guan Eng as chairman. Deputy chairman is Nga Kum Ming as maintained. And then you have a number of vice chairmen. In fact, 5 vice chairmen. Chong Chen Jin from Sarawak, the MP for Stampin. And then Teo Ni Ching, the deputy communications minister. Ng Swee Lim, who is the Adun for Sekinchan, who speaks very good Malay and also Javanese as well. You go to Sekinchan, you'll be able to see a big signboard of him there welcoming you. And then Sharizan bin Johan, the MP for Bangi, my successor. And then Arul Kumar, who is Adun in Negeri Sembilan. So they increase, I think, the number of vice chairmen, so to speak, and we'll come back to that later. Of course, important position, Setiausaha Agong or SecGen. That's the highest and most powerful position within the DAP. Loke Siu Fok or Anthony Loke. And assisting him are 3 deputy SecGens. Stephen Sim, Hannah Yeo, and also Ram Kapal. You have the treasurer, Nge Kuham, the deputy treasurer, Ng Zihan, who's an exco in Selangor. And then you have the National Organising Secretary, Khoo Pei Tiong, the Kota Melaka MP. And then the Assistant Secretaries are Tan Hong Pin, MP for Bakri in Johor, and Lee Chen Xian or Lee Chin Chen, and Adun in Bentong. The Publicity Secretary, Yo Bi Yin. She's assisted by Yang Safura, who is the MP for Bentong, and then Wong Su Chi, the MP for Kluang. And then the International Secretary, Kasturi Pato, who used to be an MP in Batu Kawan. And then the Assistant International Secretary is Alice Lau, MP for Lanang in Sibu in Sarawak, and also Deputy Speaker now. And then Education Secretary is Lee Chuan Hao or Howard Lee, assisted by Vivian Wong. And then the Strategic Director, Liu Chin Tong. The Policy Director, Chan Fong Hin, MP for Kota Kinabalu, and also Deputy Minister for Plantations and Commodities. And then Elections Director is Wong Kah Ho, the Deputy Education Minister and MP for Taiping. Then finally, we have the three normal AJKs, Teo Kok Siong, Adun in Negeri Sembilan, and also EXCO. Chow Kon Yao, who is the Chief Minister of Penang, and then Liao Cai Tong, who is Adun in Johor Jaya. Right. So, for I think the outsider looking in, you probably don't really understand the significance of these kinds of positions other than right on the top, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Right. So for you, probably important is Sec Gen, okay, Anthony Loke, right? And then Chairman, Gobind Singh.
Yeah, and then the deputies.
Yeah.
That's pretty much about it, man.
Correct. So let me just give you the sort of like hierarchy and then raise up some questions. In terms of the hierarchy, like I said, Anthony Loke, the fact that he's there, he's definitely, the primus inter pares, maybe the first among equals as Secretary General. And then Gobind, as Chairman, will play a supportive role to Anthony. The Deputy Chairman, Nga Ko Meng, I think it's a role that he is comfortable with in a sense that he is in the party hierarchy. He's one of the important leaders within the party and probably will be one of the key people that will decide the candidate lineup in the next general election as well. So I would say that in the sort of like influence kind of ecosystem, these three would be the most important. The Sec Gen, the chairman, and also the deputy chairman, right? And then, after that, the next most important position is actually the National Organizing Secretary, right? The National Organizing Secretary, or NOS, is the person that, does the branch registration, approves all the establishment of new branches, sends out letters to the different branch chairman.
And what's that called in Bahasa here?
Okay, this one is Setiausaha Organisasi Kebangsaan. Yeah, we call it NOS in the DAP for short. Right. So that position, in the last CEC, was actually held by Stephen Sim. And now it's been given to Khoo Pui Tiong, who's the Kota Melaka MP. All right, so this is where it gets a little bit interesting. Take you behind the curtain, right? So in the past, the NOS position is seen as a position that is given to somebody who is being groomed to take over as Secretary General, or one of the prime candidates to take over as Secretary General.
Ah, that is interesting.
So the fact that I think Stephen Sim wasn't given that role, but he was given another role in terms of Deputy Secretary General, one of the three, which in the larger scheme of things, the Deputy Sec Gen is actually not so. I would say it's not such a heavy position from an administrative and even leadership role, because the Secretary General is the one that does, that calls the shots, right? So the fact that this was given to Khoo Pui Tiong, is an interesting move. Why do I say this? Because Khoo Pui Tiong is, number one, not seen as somebody who can be Secretary General, right? He's a very nice guy, very vocal in Parliament, has spoken up a lot on things like electoral reform and has supported Bersih in the past on many issues. But he himself would probably admit that he is not in the running to become the next Sec Gen after Anthony Loke, has to step down, after the third term. He is also seen as somebody who is perhaps more aligned with Guan Eng rather than maybe to Anthony, So, within that context, right? Why do you think this kind of appointment was made?
Ooh, now this is getting interesting.
Yes.
I think it's a little bit of a check and balance of power. That's number one. Number two, it's kind of like that person there that was eyeing on you to make sure that if you promise as a new guy you're going to do it better, you better do it better. If not, there is an opening for me to come back again kind of thing. Right? Not so much the Lim himself, but rather people were more aligning to Lim's philosophy of politics. Yeah, so that would be, I guess, the easiest read of it.
I think your first point is probably more accurate in terms of the check and balance. Even people who are aligned to Anthony may have been of the thinking that, look, we don't want to appoint an heir apparent to Anthony.
Yep.
So we put in somebody who is relatively neutral and not seen as a front runner for that position.
Okay.
Right. So, and then the others, whoever aspires to be SecGen, they can quote unquote battle it out.
Yep, that's right.
On a more even and more even playing field.
That's right. So this person becomes a referee rather.
Somebody
in a way
others will become a referee. If I were to put it in a more direct form, direct fashion, Peh Tiong is like a placeholder. So he's taking that position while waiting to see how further political developments pan out. Because one has to remember, Anthony is serving his second term now as SG, and I do hope that he also manages to serve a third term. And then after that, after he in his third term, that's when the fight to replace him starts. Right. Of course, some people can say the fight has already started, right? But it's the check and balance role is as follows. Stephen Sim is now the chairman of DAP in Penang, right? And he is in a prime position to take over Chow Kon Yeow as chief minister.
That's right.
Right. And I think the kind of check and balance thinking would be, you don't want him to have the advantage of being chief minister and then also as national organizing secretary. Means that everything is paid for you to become the next SG already. Right. So I think that kind of check and balance, which I think is a good thing, is something that that the parties are practicing. Right. So does it become clearer now?
Yeah. So it means that Koo is not entirely the front man of Lim, but rather is just more aligned, maybe time to time but not exactly he's a representation generally.
No, but it's more of the placeholder, non-threatening kind of position.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah. And then so with that in mind, that is probably one of the things I look out for. The other thing that I wanted to point out is the new publicity secretary, Yeo Bee Yin. Right, she's done a lot of publicity work before, helping Tony Phua when Tony was the publicity secretary, and I think it's good that this Teo Nee Ching is taking a break because she's done a lot of heavy lifting on the publicity side. Now she's of course a deputy minister for digital. So with Bee Yin being a backbencher, having more time, I think it's a good way for her to contribute in the party.
Yeah.
And also with all the state elections that are coming up, whether it's in Sabah, in Sarawak, maybe late Malacca and Johor, it will be also a good opportunity for her to shine, to see what else she can bring to the table.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I thought that was a good choice as well.
Yeah, it is. That's that's wisdom of the collective, so to speak. And then new political education director. So this position was held by, if I'm not mistaken, Wong Kah-Wah, who's the deputy education minister now. Howard Lee, I think, is somebody with a lot of fresh ideas, a lot of different ways of thinking and also approaching political education. So, yeah, good choice. Speaks very good Malay, logat perak. Dia selalu suka cakap logat perak.
I mean, the English with a British accent.
Yeah, correct. So, he's been on our show before, and I really appreciate Howard's sort of like contribution to the larger political and intellectual discourse. And he's also somebody who can get stuff done on the ground. So it'll be interesting to see. The new policy director is Chan Fong Hin. And for those of you who don't know, Fong Hin was one of the people that was part of the DAP Policy Forum. It was a loose grouping of different MPs and aduns and others in the DAP ecosystem that were interested in public policy. And Chan Fong Hin was actually the DAP representative for the manifesto drafting committee for Pakatan Harapan in the lead up to the 2022 elections. So yeah, I mean, somebody I think who is well versed in that role. And then the last one is this strategic director, none other than Liu Chin Tong, right? Who is many consider an important the brains of the party, so to speak, one of the key thinkers within the party. Who's also
of the party.
Yes,
that's
correct,
what they always call him, right?
yes, exactly, right. So all in all, a pretty good lineup, right?
Yeah, I think it's good. Yeah, I think it's a fantastic lineup. In fact, I thought that one thing worth to highlight is that out of all the parties that we've seen, this is the first party that you have quite a good balance of racial mix as well, in terms of top leadership as well. in the Naib Pengurusi Kebangsaan, we are seeing all three races being represented there. And I thought it's a fantastic one. And I think eventually it will be a great thing to see how DAP eventually have more mixture of other races within. Yeah. By being able to find good candidates from different races as well.
Yeah, and I think this will be part and parcel of the balancing act that Anthony has to play, in terms of attracting better quality candidates of all races and finding the right seats to put them in, and also, how he wants to manage this continued transition process.
So I think it's a right foot forward, right? Because when I look at this, it's very hopeful. It doesn't feel like even as myself looking in, right? If I were to join a party, it makes it very attractive because number one, there is a chance to actually climb up the leadership ladder, right? Compared to many other party where you need to wait for a person to die first, lah. So
yeah, you can see the old guard is there until
Sampai hari kiamat. even then, there's a negotiation of passing down to the kid rather than you, right? So there's an issue.
Yes.
I think
hopefully DAP don't encounter those kinds of issues.
Yeah. And
hopefully,
number two, that there is a good representation of race that's starting to emerge, where hopefully it truly represents the Malaysian spirit itself. Right? Yeah.
Yeah. No. So I think it's a good sign to maybe other parties in Malaysia. And for me, because I know the party dynamics relatively well, I knew that despite all the public, discourse, especially in the Chinese media about, Lim Guan Eng, 要不要送神, you want to send the Tokong off or want to keep him. I knew that the party is actually stable and that the transition process was already happening, right? Regardless of what happened to Lim Guan Eng. And I think the fact that you can see the lineup that we see, having these kinds of positions allocated to them is part and parcel of that leadership transition. Whereas if you look at a party like, let's say UMNO for the sake of argument, you don't really see a new lineup of young leaders coming in. Don't see prominent people within the party given certain leadership positions that can represent the party better at the national level, right? So DAP, I think, clearly is ahead on this front. But maybe just last part on this section, I'm going to be a bit naughty here. Because we talk about succession, in this program before, and, speculating ahead, 6 years later when there's going to be a new Secretary General for the DAP after Anthony hopefully finishes his 3 terms, this actually sets up the sort of like landscape in terms of possible contenders for the SG position. So I'm going to throw out a few names and then I'm going to see your reaction, gauge your reaction, and you can share your reaction to these names. Right? So the first one I'm going to throw out is Stephen Sim. Right?
Looks like it.
Likely to be the next Chief Minister of Penang, former Deputy Minister of Youth and Sports, and then Finance, and then now Minister for Human Resources, MP for Bukit Mertajam, speaks Malay well. I think is well accepted among the Malay community and also the non-Malay community. What do you think of him as a future Secretary General of the DAP?
I think based on all that I've seen, he definitely stands a very good chance and looks like the most logical candidate to be groomed towards. Right? Just like what you say, and on top of all that memang on the ground level is quite good. He also knows how to publicize himself very well.
Social media game is quite
social
strong.
Media game is strong. And he knows how to be in the right place at the right time with the right pictures, with the right coverage. That is it is big because when we look at that, right, in my opinion, is that it is not just a very well done thing as an individual, but it means that he also has the right team to get him there at the right place. Correct. And that's very important if you want to be sustainable in politics.
Sure. Yeah. Yep. Agree with all those points. Okay, next name I want to put on the table, and I hope I don't get this guy in trouble. Liu Chin Tong, current Deputy Minister of MITI, former Deputy Minister of Defence, has been an MP in Penang, now in Johor, and was a senator also, intellectual, but at the same time can also connect with the grassroots as well. Former DAP chairman of Johor. So what do you think?
he would be a very interesting choice. The reason being is because he always has sit in that mold as an advisor, not much as a leader, but that doesn't mean that he doesn't have the ability to lead. Definitely on the publicity side, when we look at it, he doesn't have that proudness and aggression to display those leadership quality, but rather always display himself as a thinker. So I think probably if there is a day that he's being considered as a leader to be a run-up of it, will be because people have less confidence at the other party and expecting that his competitor need a bit more time to grow.
Okay.
And then they will probably likely put him up there as a person to kind of mentor and guide. But I personally think that if that day comes, chances are he's going to take over as the chairman, and then the other person will be the
So the chairman as the thinker, and then the SG as more of the leader.
Yes, it looks more like that as a conventional choice if nothing screws up.
Okay.
It will be a whole different story if something screws up.
Okay,
right?
yeah, makes sense. Good observation. I think, you are sort of like getting the ebb and flow of politics in Malaysia. Yeah. Okay, third name I'm going to put out there. Wong Kah-Wah. MP for Taiping, former MP for Ipoh Timur, former Adun, former Exco in Perak, now Deputy Minister of Education. Not many people know, he actually studied law at the International Islamic University, and ran his own practice, and is somebody who is, I think, quite well respected on the ground and has served the party well, and is well liked as well. So I don't know how much you've heard of him or how well you know of him, but what do you think of Kah-Wah as a possible choice?
Again, because he lacked the publicity, and so what happened is that I don't know much about him. But so far, everything they hear about him generally is that he's a solid guy, stuff like that. But I'll put it this way, solid guy can only take you so far. The truth that it's still a publicity game. So there will only be a couple of reasons that, again, he can climb further up, in my opinion, at this point, right? Yeah, is that, again, it requires more publicity to be placed on him. There's two ways that this can happen. Either the other party made some mistakes, or either he made it. Now, on the other hand, I think someone like himself, if let's say he is not very into publicity, just as the current stage that we are seeing, he will need to be very good at building strong relationships and proving himself to be a brain. So if he can align himself more with people who are more brainy, let's say, for example, again, I do not know the party dynamics and the personal relationship. If he can be seen as a successor of Chin Tong, he has a higher chance of being a competitor with Steven Sim.
Okay.
Because always when there are more publicity and more upfront work, sometimes it's always a tug of war to make internal party happy means you go out less, right? But you go out less, then you get less publicity. So it's always a swing between these two.
Sure.
So I am unsure about him again. And I always see the publicity thing, right, as a matter of team. Yeah, because if there is a leader who knows very well how to move up the leadership game, you will know that publicity is required. So even if you're not good, you know how to surround yourself with the right people who know how to play publicity.
Who can help you with the publicity
That's right.
game.
I would say, like, I think I mentioned to you before, I think someone who does it very well, aside from Steven Sim, is actually Ngah Meng. Yeah. I met him before. I've seen his team. Fantastic team. Yeah, that's what I can say. Like regardless of whatever people want to say about him, right? I think having a strong foundation of team will take him very far. And he knows his position, how he wants to play this, right? So he doesn't go and fight unnecessary battles.
Sure.
He only fight the battle that matters to him.
So since you brought him up, and since you say his publicity is strong, why not Ngah Meng, current housing and local government minister, MP Adun in Perak, strongman in Perak, is well liked among the non-Malay community, especially the Chinese community, very good public speaker. What about him as a possible Secretary General? What do you think?
If I am him, I wouldn't go for this.
Okay, why?
Because there's too much at stake. Yeah. The wins is not much.
Okay.
But the risk is very high.
Okay.
Yeah. At this point right now, he's already someone who's very influential in the party.
Very senior, like
very
I see
senior,
top 3 already.
Yeah. His one word can influence a lot of decisions, right? And sometimes it doesn't mean that, like, even if he wants to steer things certain direction, he doesn't need to be the sec-gen to steer direction. He can steer it just by being a little bit more involved in certain things that he wants to.
He can influence in other ways.
Yes, that's right. And so why do you want to sacrifice that? And when you put yourself at the forward guy, you're you're going to have a lot of arrows, a big target at your back, just like Steven Sim right now, right? He has a big target at his back. Yeah, like it or not, he has a big target at his back.
Yeah.
So I think it attracts a lot of unnecessary attention. So it is pointless. It is much more effective and efficient for him to decide who he wants to groom as the next leader and align himself more closely to increase his influence of power.
Yeah. I think that's very accurate. Probably just want to add in one more point, which is the fact that Kwok Ming is actually a bit older than Anthony. He's, I think, 53 or 54 this year, which means that in 6 years' time, he'll be 60 years old.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah.
So, in terms of leadership transition, that kind of narrative, I think age is something that people do see as a potential factor. So, apart from his very strong CV, this may be one of the things that he and maybe others in the party would think about. I want to give out put out two more names, just to balance the gender dynamics a little bit better. Because 1/3 of the CEC is actually comprised of women. Two names, two women, and both have very good publicity games. One is Teo Nee Ching, the other one is Yeo Bee Yin. Right? Both of them are well liked in the public. Both of them speak well. Both of them, have strong teams, helping them with their publicity, and they also have government experience. What do you think about these two candidates?
I would say that, again, just personal opinion. I would say Yeo Bee Yin will stand a good chance.
Okay, why?
Yeah. I think for one, she has proven herself as a very solid candidate when she was a minister. Yeah. Number two, her perseverance of even when she was pregnant, she went and helped out. Everyone knew how strong this lady can be when it comes to that. Right? Number three, also, she does have the financial backing, right? But that one is least of the...
That one is issue. Plus or minus?
That is a plus. It's a plus.
Okay,
it's a plus.
Okay.
But it's not the biggest plus. In fact, that could also be her biggest weakness.
Okay.
Because she's seen as... in fact, if in the past she was able to fundraise, it would have given her credit for it. Today, if she's able to fundraise, people won't give her credit for it. So, in fact, it became...
A bit of a negative.
For her. So it's unfair, but that's life.
That's
right?
Life, yes.
Yeah, and generally human beings have a jealousy towards people who are doing extremely well.
Sure.
Yeah. So that's unfortunate. But in terms of an all aspect of her ability to do publicity, of her ability to run things and get things down on the ground, and being a very inspiring person, I think that part she fits. Because to a certain extent, somehow I got a gut feeling that in terms of inspiring younger generation, Yeo Bee Yin has that very strong with her. And I've seen her talk, spoken to her, interacted with her, and she has this ability to give people a glimmer of hope. Yeah, which is not about publicity. It's just naturally...
The natural charisma.
Her natural charisma. That one is extremely, extremely strong in her. If the party wants to give this renewed sense of identity that we are more diverse, that will play to her favor, where she's a female candidate.
Okay.
Yeah. But I think the question is whether does she want to fight for it?
Okay. Yeah, maybe we should get her on this show and ask her.
No, in fact, in my personal opinion, she may not want to fight for it. It will be a huge struggle for her.
Okay.
There's too many things to consider.
Sure. Yeah, I think it'll be a tricky balancing act and also a tricky decision.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So with that in mind, let's take a break and then we'll come back with part 3 of this special episode on the DAP CEC elections. Be right back. Welcome back to part 3 of this episode on the DAP CEC elections. So in the first part, we talked about who are in the top 30 and how that represents a generational change. Second part, we delve into the details of who's taking up different responsibilities within the party and maybe future leadership responsibilities as well. The third part, we want to talk about Anthony Loke's plan and legacy, right? So just to set the context, Anthony gave a press conference just 3 days before the CEC elections and talked about how he was committed to, lead the party forward and that the party elections is not solely about Lim Guan Eng and that he is proposing different internal reforms, including formalizing the candidate selection process, within the party constitution, and also wants to make the candidate selection process more transparent and systematic in order to prevent internal disputes. And he also talked about a 2-term PM constitutional limit, and that was said with Anwar Ibrahim in the audience, right? So I thought that was quite a smart move for Anthony to bring up. So, from this kind of language, these kinds of commitments, as an outsider, how important is it, do you think, is it for him to be able to deliver on at least some of these institutional reforms within the party?
I think it's extremely important. I was quite surprised to hear him announce and say it in public with Anwar in presence that he will propose a 2-term thing.
Yep.
Number 2 is that he focused the highlight on transition of leadership. Yeah, that is very unlike him, in my opinion. Yeah, where he upfront deals with the thing in a very public manner. And I think whatever he say just gives me a lot more confidence that he's going to pull it through. And I think it's extremely important, because if not, there's a very high chance that DAP will become MCA. Yeah, I think with whatever that they have in plan and whatever they've said, it is all very important policy measures to be implemented so that there is a less chance of it failing. Because let's be honest, just like every business, it will be one day there'll be a fool that's gonna take the reign. Yeah, one day. Yeah, so policies are in place so that when fools take the reign, it will not screw up that much.
Okay. Yeah, you want to do some damage control in terms of the institutional protections.
Prevention.
Yeah. Okay, that's a good point. What Anthony announced and said didn't really surprise me that much, because Anthony is somebody who is very careful in terms of his public pronouncements, in the sense that he doesn't feel the need to speak out all the time. But when he speaks out, you better pay attention, because he means what he says.
And strategically at the right place, right time. Yeah, I'm very impressed at that. Yeah, that one I was super impressed.
Yeah. So, for example, the fact that he talked about the 2-term constitutional limit for the Prime Minister, with the Prime Minister is in attendance, is something that I think was very carefully calculated, given the fact that the chances of Anwar wanting to stay beyond 2 terms is not very high. Right, he's almost 80 years old already. I don't think he wants to repeat, what his predecessor did with regards to Tun Mahathir. And at the same time, even if, let's say, this gets implemented, right, it won't be backdated. Meaning, if, let's say, for the sake of argument, it gets implemented, at the end of this parliamentary session.
Yep.
Right, it may apply only the next parliamentary session. Right.
So there's 3 terms ineffective.
So I think that was done, quite smart from a calculated perspective. The institutionalization of the candidate selection process, I think, is good on paper. Whether or not it can be implemented in a way that's relatively clean, I think it's not clean. Meaning, you can minimize the kinds of quarrels and all that and disputes, like what he indicated. That is still, I think, subject to looking at the details. I think it's on the right path. I will only add one more thing, and for this, I credit my good friend Syahril Hamdan from the Keluar Sekejap podcast, where he talked about the need for political parties to have some sort of a code of conduct. Which is one thing that I think Anthony and no one in the DAP has really talked about. And what do I mean by code of conduct? In the past, when we were in the opposition, there's no need for us to think too much about, proper behavior, certain ethical practices, and all of that sort, even on the fundraising side. Right? But now that many of the DAP leaders are in government, whether at the state or at the federal level, there will be questions that will be asked. For example, a family member gets a government contract, right? Or a close associate of yours who is like a lawyer or somebody in the service industry gets access to government contracts, whether at state or federal level, right? What are the kind of best practices from an ethical perspective, right? And even fundraising. If let's say you want to fundraise to build a new HQ, right? What are within the parameters of acceptability, right? So all these things are very grey. I think it would be good if, let's say, there can be, let's say a committee form between DAP veterans and some members of the NGO community, lawyers, for example, respected judges, who can give some inputs into why something like this is important. And that, I think, would be a good legacy for Anthony to leave as well. Because if not, without this kind of reference point, right, your question about DAP becoming MCA 2.0, I think that will become more dangerous.
Actually,
more likely to
I'm a
happen.
bit surprised that there's no code of conduct.
No, that's not.
Because even basic companies, you start off with that, right?
Sure.
A code of ethics. There's no. If let's say your director owns a company, you don't sub out a job. If you sub out, you need to declare. If you're in a bank, you buy stocks, you need to declare. And I thought it should have been in place.
It's just a list of recommendations. Things like, for example, you shouldn't
it's a guideline lah.
Guidelines, yes. You shouldn't hire. You shouldn't put a family member on government's payroll, for example, right? So those are things that I think in government, it's something that you probably need to have, and more institutionalized. If you're in opposition, okay lah, you need help. You need your daughter or your son to come and help you out during elections. You pay the person an allowance from the money that you get from fundraising. I think that's probably still okay. But now you're in government. You have access to government resources, your allocation, things like that, right? Then these things need to be spelt out, properly.
Right. So there were a norm back then, but it wasn't a spelt out, institutionalized kind of code.
Yes. So like the example I just gave, okay lah. If let's say you want your son or daughter to have political experience, ask the person to work in somebody else's office.
Correct.
Right? Then if that person is on another MP or ADUN's payroll, then it's not breaching code of conduct, right?
That's right.
So I think these are the kind of things that I think are more interesting to put out there in terms of the institutional reforms within the party. Then let's go on to any other questions that you want to talk about with regards to Anthony's leadership and his commitment to institutional reforms.
No man, I'm just impressed that he brought it up, and I thought it was very interesting because I think it's a very smart political move where he made the CEC not just a campaign for his position at the point, but also a campaign for the next election automatically. Where he say it's going to be 2 terms, and then subsequently the whole narrative was it takes only 1 term for you to implement things. It takes the next term to see the result. Therefore, if you do not give us chance for the next one, how can we ever see the results? Right? And I thought that was a brilliant future move immediately there. He began campaigning for election even before election started.
And I think this is one of the reasons why Anthony, I think, is the most suitable candidate to be SecGen, not just now, but also I think for the next term, hopefully will be part and parcel of this delivery of the institutional reforms that he has promised. Okay, now we reach the final part of this this episode, which is probably the most interesting part to some people. Anthony did say that the party elections is not solely about Lim Guan Eng.
That's right.
And I agree with him. That's why we talk about all these other things first that are probably in the larger scheme of things more important. But we cannot ignore the elephant in the room or the tiger in the room. Guan Eng is not in this room, but he features importantly in the DAP.
He may watch this though.
Yes. I'm sure even if he doesn't watch, this part, will be, communicated to him and sent to him. So, the fact that Guan Eng came in position 26, the fact that he, was seen as fighting for his political life, so to speak. I wouldn't say got by the skin of his teeth, because there was a buffer of about 200 votes between number 26 and number 30. But it was, I think, quite close. And he managed to get in, but like we said earlier, many of the people that were his allies did not get in. So the reality of the matter is that the majority of the CEC members that were elected into the CEC are not necessarily allied with Guan Eng.
Yep.
Right. So the question that I want to throw out there, and I would like to hear your response as well, is now that he has been made party advisor, which is clearly a downgrade from party chairman. Of course, he may be made parliamentary leader. That one is still being discussed, I think, within the party leadership. How do you think he should respond to the signals that were indicated by the election results and by the party decision to appoint him as advisor?
I think the best way forward is to respond gracefully. Actually, to be fair to him as well, he has played a very important role and he's very inspiring. Actually, even in the early days when I started following politics, I find him a very inspiring figure, right? The story of the whole Lim family, how he went through, it's just not easy. Now, and yes, he did spoke up on many, many very important things, but I think every leader need to accept this one thing. Your leadership is only complete if you are able to hand down the reign to the next successful leader. The leadership journey is never completed if you have no successor. Yeah. And just like Tun M, who left the scene and came back, I think is always a very dangerous move. And the last part of a legacy end up tainting your whole great legacy, right? And I think that's something that he have to acknowledge, that he may play a greater role by accepting where is he going to be. Like, for example, we talked about code of conduct in the earlier part. If he would have said, hey, maybe let me lead that part to do the code of conduct because I have all the years of experience. I've seen a lot of shit that went on. I know what could go wrong. I know what the sly way of people will cut corners. And so let me help to contribute that part. And that could be a great legacy that he helped to leave behind. Right?
Yeah, good point. Yeah.
And in my opinion is that how he should take it really is to acknowledge that he has a big part to advise people, but it's okay to let other people make their decisions. Yeah. So that would be the best legacy he can leave behind moving ahead.
Yeah. So I think, knowing Guan Eng relatively well, but not having spoken to him on this CEC elections, or maybe not having spoken to him or communicated with him for some time, I would say that he is licking his wounds now. He realizes that he, went into the fight, maybe, won the battle but lost the war, so to speak. In his own mind, winning the battle of getting into the CEC, but losing the war in the sense that he couldn't hold on to his chairmanship position. And I think that was very clear. And that was part and parcel of Anthony's communication process, that there's going to be a leadership change in terms of generational change. So what's next? I think you are spot on in terms of thinking about what legacy he wants to leave. Right? And this is where I think, Guan Eng needs to take a page out of his father's book, Lim Kit Siang. It is not natural, I think, to Kit Siang to sort of like not be combative and not to be the type of person who really wants to go out and put out a good fight.
Yeah.
But he transitioned into the role of a advisor, a mentor, a statesman, as he saw his the need of the party and the country transition also. Right. So, he was, open-minded enough to support Mahathir for the position of Prime Minister, invite him into Pakatan Harapan, even though Mahathir has done so much wrong against Kit Siang and also his family, against Guan Eng as well. He decided not to contest in the CEC, stepped down and not contest as an MP in the last general election. And that is part and parcel of his legacy. To pass on the reins to a younger generation. Right. So that is the same kind of question that Guan Eng himself needs to answer.
Yeah.
Right. Of course, he's a bit younger than what Kit Siang, was when he decided to step down. But, things in politics these days change much faster.
Yeah.
Right. And you have a very good lineup that's there. And I hope that he can take the advice of different people who are his friends, and maybe even, from this podcast, to say that, we respect, and I definitely respect the contributions that he's made to the party. Yeah. I've seen how he really struggled and toiled as an opposition MP in Adun, and then later on, how he really transformed the Penang state government and Penang, especially during his second term as chief minister. he was a transformational chief minister
Yes.
in many ways. He led the party to, the federal government. And he achieved the highest position that probably a Chinese or a non-Malay or non-Muslim can reach.
Yeah.
Becoming the finance minister of the country.
Right. That's right.
Right. So, he reached the top, and I think, the time is now for him to take a different role.
Yeah.
Frankly speaking, I think the kind of role that he took in Penang in the lead up to the state elections in 2023, and also the kind of tone that he took campaigning from behind the scenes in Penang during the state committee elections last year, I think it was very ugly. Of course, we are in KL, you're not a party member, I wasn't part of the DAP Penang ecosystem. We didn't see it really upfront, but I heard enough about it to know how it was very destructive. And the way, and we've spoken about this in a previous episode, how he undermined the leadership of Chow Kon Yeow as chief minister as well, which, really made a lot of people in the party not happy, and also the general public in Penang as well. So, if he continues along that same track, being that kind of fighter, but in this case fighting within the party, then he would leave a legacy of destruction and negativity that will not just impact him, but impact the party, including in Penang.
That's right.
In the transition from Chow Kon Yeow as the chief minister to likely Stephen Sim.
Yeah.
Right? So rather than having that kind of confrontational approach, why not slowly pivot? Or the faster you pivot, the better. And try to support the younger leaders, support people like, Stephen Sim in Penang, support Anthony Loke at the federal level, support the other ministers that are doing their best, give them guidance, quietly.
Yeah.
And if you want to speak out only selectively.
That's right.
Right? There are other people that can speak on different issues, people like Raya, people like, and some of the other backbenchers as well, with positions in the CEC, with certain expertise in different areas of policy making. Right? And then, as a statesman, you come out only when it's necessary to have that kind of voice.
That's right.
In public and also in private through, Pakatan Harapan.
Yeah.
And now that you are no longer chairman or SG, let the people in leadership in the DAP take those issues to Pakatan Harapan, to the unity government, and try to solve it within that ecosystem first.
Actually, to put it very, very simple, right? I mean, not very simple, but in my own opinion, when I look at it, sometimes he should actually feel really proud of himself, because it is over the years of grooming the next generation leader. That's why the next generation leader are so strong. And when they're so strong that they're able to be independent, and it's part of his work and effort.
And his legacy.
Yeah, and his legacy, right? Yeah, but when the children become bigger, I mean, just myself, I'm a parent. If you try to control them and because you think that my way is the best way, then that's when it may not turn very well. In fact, the best thing to do is to bask in that pride that you have built a legacy behind and walk off and say, great, now it's your turn to fight the battle. And the truth is, not everyone is a management leader. Some are transformational leader. Some will not be able to sail the ship when things are smooth. Like I always tell my team as well, I say I may be a good leader when the team is small, when we have 50 or 20. But one day when we hit, like say 100 over, one day when we are looking at 3-figure million to billion kind of business, I am also unsure whether am I that kind of leader, because it requires a whole separate set of ways of doing things and understanding of matter.
Different skill sets, yes.
Different skill sets. So, and it's okay because you have already brought up one generation and you should be proud of that. So I think that even when I hear you talking about this thing, and I think many other leaders, when they say this thing, he may take it as like it's an attack, or like, why you're saying this kind of thing about me, right? But
why are you forgetting my previous contributions?
But actually, I think he need to understand that it's not the case. Actually, I think there are a lot of people like yourself who really wants to protect his legacy. Maybe it may not land on the right ears and feel correctly, But actually, the truth is that is the intention. Yeah, when I hear a lot of people talk about it, and even in my conversation with you, I can hear it's a genuine concern and care rather than, hey, step down like you're not good. It's not like that.
Correct.
Yeah.
And I think the larger picture is actually, what people are talking about with regards to the Lim Dynasty, right? And, probably one related question I want to throw your way is, given the fact that Lim Hui Ying now is no longer in the CEC, and being associated with Guan Eng is not necessarily something that's positive, how do you think she should try to position herself moving forward?
I think that will be the question on whether does she really want to move up in this place, right? From an outsider perspective, sometimes it just feel like she's put in there because it's just part of the way to continue. Now, however, I think that she has the ability to proceed up as an individual. But then now it comes down to a level playing field where she must not just say ride on the coattails. But I would say that to use that to a certain advantage, because I think a lot of opportunities already open up to her if she is willing to put in the same level of work as everyone else. Like, for example, build up her own publicity, not just depend on a surname or anything, but rather really building up our own publicity, really going out there and doing those work, really spend the time to build personal relationship with the people within the organization rather than being a daughter of someone, right? I think if she does that, she will be able to leapfrog herself forward compared to anyone else and never know.
So basically, this is a good opportunity to stand on her own two feet and prove herself.
Yes, and the credit will be very strong if she is able to prove herself. You just think about, I'm not a very good example, but one thing about like Najib, right? A big part of it is because before 1MDB, he did his job well, and also at the same time, he carries a family legacy. Yeah, and these two combining together gives you that extra leverage to push forward. Yeah,
and you can say that Guan Eng himself, he also proved himself, and came out of his father's shadow to be Chief Minister of Penang, and then later on, Minister of Finance. Right. So I think maybe just to wrap up this session, the Lim family definitely have contributed a lot to Malaysian politics, and I think it would be, a disservice to the legacy of the Lim family if, let's say, they are seen, whether as individuals or as a collective, to be seen as fighting more for their own personal interests rather than the larger interests of the party and the country. And I think Kit Siang has led the way in terms of showing how you can pivot to a different kind of role, a more statesman-like role. And I think, it is up to Guan Eng on whether he wants to do that. It's up to Hui Ying on whether, on how she wants to prove herself as an individual leader within the party. And hopefully things turn out the best for the Lim family. And if that is the best outcome, it will also be a good outcome for the party and the country.
If I may add one last thing, right, to think about it, right? Tun Mahathir's legacy, up to the point when he became a prime minister, was fantastic because for a long time he actually really sat at the back. He really transitioned out, right? And when things were in dire state and when you need the kind of fighting leader coming up again, then he emerged and he garnered the biggest support. Yeah, because he came out at the right time. It was only after when he fell the next round and then he refused to let go of the power the next time that his legacy was tainted. So I think at a young age as Guan Eng is, he still have the chance if, let's say, things don't turn out right. But it shouldn't be based on a meticulously planned to make it happen. It should be if one day, then he may actually stand a chance to be still that trusted leader. But if he doesn't, then it will become like Tun Nam. Like right now, even if things don't turn out right, no one wants Tun Nam to be the leader anymore.
Exactly.
Yeah. So that will be a very important point to remember.
I think that's an excellent point to end this session on. And any other questions that you want to bring up before we wrap it up?
No. I think what I can say is that if there are any people who are thinking about joining the political party, a political party such as a DAP or something else, how should they go about? Maybe with such a renewed leadership, some people who are standing on the sidelines thinking about whether to join the party or not may be interested. So maybe there's a way, right? And yeah, perhaps we can wrap it up with just that.
Yeah, I think if those of you who are interested to join the DAP specifically, since we're talking about the DAP elections this time round, go and approach somebody who is in the position of DAP leadership in your own constituency. It can be a branch chairman, it can be Ali Majlis or local councillor, it can be an Adun, it can be an MP. Just talk to that person or talk to a few people to offer up whatever services you think you can put on the table, volunteer for some of the constituency activities, get to know the leaders, and then see whether there's specific areas that you can contribute to the party and to the larger community that's around you. And if it works out, then great. If it doesn't, then you would have learned from that process, and hopefully your experiences, skill sets, and networks would have grown as a result. So with that, I'd like to thank you very much, and we'll see you next week.
See you guys.